All right, let's talk about background images. Quite often, we use background images for decorative purposes. For example, we can apply a background to our body element or a section or a header and so on. So let's go ahead and apply a background image to the body element. So we go to our style sheet and define a new rule for the body element. Now, earlier we talked about the background property, which is a shorthand for background color or background image. So to apply a background image, we can either use the background image property or background. I'm going to go with background because it's shorter. Now to load an image, here we call the URL function and type a relative or an absolute path to our image. So look, currently we are in styles.css, and this file is inside the CSS folder. So we have to go one level up, then we go to the images folder and load one of these files. So we type .. and with this we go one level up. Then we go to the images folder and load bg-paper.jpg. So take a look. Here's what we get. This is the actual image, but as you can see, this image is repeated horizontally and vertically. This looks ugly, but we have full control over these background images. So back to our style sheet, here we can set background repeat to no repeat, and this disables the horizontal and vertical repetitions. Now, sometimes we want the background image to be repeated in one direction. For example, here we can set background repeat to repeat X, and this will repeat the background only along the horizontal axis. So here's what we get. Other times we want to repeat it vertically. So we set this property to repeat -y, and here's what we get. So the value that we set here really depends on our image and its dimensions. In this demo, I'm going to go with no repeat. Now, by default, our background is placed at the top left corner of its container, which is in this case, the body element, but we have full control over the position of the background. So here we set background -position to. Now here we need to supply two values, one for the horizontal adjustment, the other for the vertical adjustment. So we can push this background 100 pixels to the right and 100 pixels down. And here's what we get. We can also supply negative values. So if you want to push this image 100 pixels to the left, we pass -100 pixels. Now the actual values you use really depends on your image. For example, our image might be a photo of a table with a meal. Now in some cases, we might want to reposition the background so the meal is in the center of attention. Or we might want to change the position of the background so we have some free space for our text. So the values we pass here really depends on the image. Now in this example, I'm using absolute values, but we can also use relative values. For example, if we set the first value to 100%, this will push the background to the right side of its container. So here's what we get. So this is all about the background position property. Now we can also change the size of our background image. So we can set background size to two values, one for the width, the other for the height. So we can set it to 200 pixels and 200 pixels. And here's what we get. And of course, we can use relative values. For example, we can set the first value to 100%. And now our background stretches to fill the entire width of its container. Now, what if we set the second value to 100%? What's going to happen? Our background disappeared. Can you explain why? We talked about this before. Because our body element is a block level element, and as you know, the height of block level elements is by default 0. So they get tall enough to fit their content. Now in this example, we don't have anything inside the body element, so its height is 0. That's why when we set the second value here to 100%, that means 100% the height of the container, which is 0. But if we set the height of this body element to 100 VH, now our background stretches to fill the entire container. Now here we also have a keyword called cover. This will resize the background so it covers the entire container while keeping its aspect ratio. So in this case, our background covers the entire page. Now if you pay close attention, you can see that our background image looks a little bit blurry because the image I have used here is very small. It's only 400 pixels wide, but our browser window here is much wider. So here we can use another image that I have supplied in the zip file that I gave you in the last lesson. That is bg-paper at 2x. So it's the same image, but twice bigger. Now take a look. See, our image is less blurry. We can see these beautiful patterns in the paper. So when setting background images, we have full control over their repetition, their position, and their size. Now there is one more property you need to know. Let's change our background to BG-San Francisco. So we get a beautiful picture of the Golden Gate in San Francisco. Now I'm going to add a heading on top of this background. So here in index.html, let's add an h1 element and say my heading. Take a look. So here's what we get. We could also have some text content. It doesn't matter. Now I want to increase the height of this page, so we have vertical scrolling. So currently the height is set to 100% of the height of the viewport. I'm going to change it to 300, so we get vertical scrolling. But do you see what happened to the background image? Our background has grown way larger because now we have a much bigger area that the background should cover. Because earlier, we set the background size property to cover. So the browser is going to resize the background so it covers the entire container. And that's why our background looks very blurry here. But let's not worry about this for a second. What I want to point out here is that as we scroll up or down, our background also moves. Now here we have a property called background attachment. If we set it to fixed, our background is going to stay fixed relative to the viewport. So if you scroll up and down, the background doesn't move, but our content is moving. And also note that the background is much smaller now because it's covering only 100% of the height of the viewport, not 300. So if we set background attachment to fixed, the background will be fixed relative to the viewport.